What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about how to improve your kill-death ratio and stay alive longer in Call of Duty World War II. Now the first thing I want to say right up front here is this isn't a video about how to just artificially skew your kill-death ratio by just camping in a corner all game and therefore getting more kills with less deaths. Honestly, that's just super easy to do. Anybody can do that. It doesn't take much skill at all. And really, what's the point of even playing the game if all you're doing is playing to artificially skew some stat? This video is more so designed around actually helping you improve at this game so that you're getting more kills in a game while dying less. This is about maximizing kills and minimizing deaths, not just minimizing deaths and it doesn't really matter how many kills you get, it's all just about that kill-death ratio stat. In my opinion, the actual stat of kill-death ratio isn't even the best indicator of skill in a Call of Duty game. I strongly feel that game mode specific score per minute is a much better indicator of how much of an impact you have on the game, and therefore how much of a threat you actually are as a player to your enemies. So that's the first tip I'm going to give you guys right here. Stop worrying so much about the actual kill-death ratio stat. That's not what matters. What matters is improving as a player, and if you actively work towards improving, your kill-death ratio will improve organically. This is what we want to aim for. Now with this video, I decided to break it up into sections just so that it's a little bit more coherent and I'm not just randomly throwing out tips left, right, and center. I want to try to keep it organized. The first section we're going to be focusing on is general awareness in the game. This includes not only knowing what's going on around you, but knowing what's going on around the map in general. With this, the first thing I wanted to point out, and this is a relatively basic thing, but sometimes people can use a reminder here, is make sure you learn and know all of the common positions and the power positions on every one of the maps in the game. Especially when you're first loading the map. When the map is loading, just visualize, think to yourself, where are the places that you just know enemies are going to be gravitating towards? Where do they always go? Usually these are pretty easy to detect. All it takes is playing a map a few times and you'll know a lot of these positions. I've got a bunch of them just playing in the background here for you guys to see. Not every single one in the game by any means. But just think of these positions and then start formulating ways to counter these positions. If you know where enemies are going to be and you can think of ways to counter them effectively and creatively and unpredictably, you are going to be able to find success in taking those people out. If you guys are interested in seeing some great lines of sight to counter a lot of these power positions in this game and to be much more effective at killing these people, make sure you check out Maps Exposed. That's a playlist that I have on my channel. I will leave that link down below. And this series gives you lots of spots and lots of ways to take out people that are in common positions. Going off of the same point of understanding where the power positions are, you generally want to avoid lingering in these positions for too long because there are other players out there that are formulating ways to take you out of those positions. That's not to say that you should never use these power positions. They are called power positions for a reason because they are quite powerful. But generally you don't want to be caught lingering in these areas. Basically, if you're going to use a power position, pop into that power position for a couple seconds, maybe pick off a kill or two, and then get out of there and move on. So that's the first and one of the more basic things when it comes to general awareness around the map. If you know the power positions, you know where people are generally going to gravitate towards. Next is a bit more advanced, although in this game it is relatively simple. This is spawns. The spawns in this game are actually quite simple and easy to predict for most game modes. And the reason behind this is the simplistic map design. Spawns are often almost completely based on the map design of a game, and with this game, a lot of the maps tend to be more linear maps, and with these linear maps, spawns behave very, very basically. Now keep in mind, I will be going into much greater detail with the spawns in my spawn guide series. It will be coming in the not too distant future. It does take a lot of work to get into those episodes. With that one, we're going to be covering like actual specific spawn points and different weighting and all of that kind of stuff. This is going to be a much more basic overview, but on most of the maps, for most of the game modes, I would say some of the exceptions would be like free-for-all. We're not covering free-for-all here. Also, hardpoint is definitely an exception with this. This is more so covering modes like Team Deathmatch, Kill Confirm, Domination, Capture the Flag, Gridiron, modes like that. Generally, in this game, it's very simple. There are two sides to the map, and it's very linear. There's the side that you initially spawn at, and the side that your enemy initially spawns at. There are very few spawn points and very rare circumstances where enemies will spawn towards the middle of maps. In some of the previous Call of Duty games, we would see this a lot more often. In Call of Duty World War II, we almost never see mid-map spawns. And what this means is it's actually quite simple to predict. If you see teammates are spawning on one side of the map, or if you are spawning on one side of the map, that means 99% of the time the enemies are spawning on the other side of the map. If you're pushing up towards the enemy spawn and you suddenly notice a teammate spawns within the enemy spawn area, that means the spawns have flipped and you need to turn around because the enemies are now spawning in what was your spawn. It's really as simple as that when it comes to basic spawn knowledge in this game. Now keep in mind, on either end of the map, there might be like a spawn zone that's a little bit more to the left, one that's in the middle, and one that's in the right. So there are definitely some subtleties that I'm not covering here, but I'll get into with the spawn guide series. But that's just a general way to approach and understand the spawns, is there's basically just two sides of the map for most of the maps in this game. And something that I kind of touched on there, but I wanted to go a little bit more into detail with when it comes to awareness here, is using your minimap. Your minimap is very important, it always has been. And in CoD World War II, unfortunately, the minimap size and coverage is much smaller than we've seen in previous Call of Duty games. This makes it a bit more difficult to use, but it is still a very valuable tool for you. Not only can you see the red dots that pop up when enemies are firing unsilenced guns or when you have a recon plane up, but you can also see your teammates' positioning, and this is something that's often very underrated. If you know where your teammates are and you know where your teammates are spawning, this gives you a lot of information on where the enemies are going to be. Like I said earlier, if you see a teammate spawn on one side of the map, that generally means, more often than not, that the enemy team is spawning on the opposite side of the map at that current moment. Also, if you're just trying to find enemies, generally, the places where you don't have teammates, that's where enemies are going to be. So if you're just seeking out enemies and you're trying to get into the fight and try to find those enemies, look for pockets on your minimap where you don't have teammates. That's generally where you're going to find the enemies. So that's going to wrap it up for this first section on just overall awareness of what's going on around you. Obviously, there's a lot more detail I could get into, but it is time to move on to the next section, and this is movement, particularly how to get around the map most effectively to maximize kills and minimize deaths in this game. The first thing that you really need to pay attention to in this area is watch your sprinting. Sprint out times in the game's current state are very slow. If you get caught sprinting by somebody that's not sprinting or already aimed down sight, you pretty much just don't stand a chance in a gunfight. So you don't want to be that person. You want to be the guy that's catching the other people sprinting. What this means is you often want to move from cover to cover, and anytime you come around a corner, or most of the time when you come around corners, you can't do this on every single corner you come around, but if you even half suspect that an enemy could be around that corner, try to pre-aim that corner. Don't sprint around corners at all. This is a general tip that applies to pretty much all first-person shooter games, but it applies even more so in this game because of those slow sprint out times. Another thing that comes with general movement around the map and navigating the maps, if you're trying to maximize the number of kills while minimizing the number of deaths, generally you want to stick towards the edges of maps. If you push up towards the middle of a map, there are a lot of directions you have to worry about and a lot of potential places you can be killed from. If you stick towards the edge of the map, generally you only have to worry about two directions, the direction in front of you and the direction that is opposite to the edge of the map. Usually the area you just came from is going to be a safe area because you just cleared through there, you pushed through there. And then of course the edge of the map, that's a safe area because you're not going to be shot from outside the map. Generally speaking, I don't think there are any major out of map glitches at this point in the game's life cycle, so not something you have to worry about. You just have to worry about what's in front of you and the side that is opposite to the edge of the map from you. This allows you to control situations a lot more effectively, which in turn will allow you to avoid a lot of those deaths where you just feel completely surrounded. Now keep in mind with this one, this is more of a general rule. This doesn't mean that you should never go towards the middle of the map. A lot of the times that's where the kills are, and you kind of need to venture in there if you want to maximize your kills. Just don't stay in the middle of the map for too long and realize when you are in the middle of the map, you're putting yourself at risk. And that's pretty much going to cover it for the movement section of this video. Next up, I want to talk about gunfights in particular. So this is when you're actually fighting face to face with an enemy. How do you stack those odds in your favor? Well, the first thing you can do is you can practice your accuracy. I actually have an aiming drill that is designed to accelerate this process. If you find yourself missing shots often, this is going to help you significantly. If you do this drill every single time you pop on, just do it for 10 minutes or so every time you play the game, your aim will improve over time. I will leave that link down below if you guys haven't seen that yet. Make sure you check it out. But aside from accuracy, the major thing to know in this game, like I talked about earlier, the sprint out times are quite slow. Most gunfights in this game are won before you even see your enemy. It's all about setting yourself up in a good position with cover, which is why we move from cover to cover generally, and also making sure you don't get caught sprinting. In a lot of previous Call of Duty games, this stuff wasn't nearly as relevant. It was more so your reaction time, your ability to snap on a target, and hit your consecutive shots as fast as possible. That really just doesn't apply nearly as much in this game. You could have the fastest reaction time possible, but if you get caught sprinting by somebody that's in cover and aiming down sight, you really just don't stand a chance, and this is due to the sprint out times. So make sure you're getting yourself set up properly for gunfights. If you expect that you might be running into the enemy soon, make sure you aren't sprinting, even if this just means you start walking around the map or walking to your next position rather than sprinting to your next position. That can be very helpful. Same thing goes if you expect an enemy to be coming around a corner, get pre-aimed. Make sure you're aiming down sight where you expect that enemy to be coming from, and best case scenario, he'll sprint around the corner and you'll get a free kill because you're already pre-aiming him. Now, a couple options you have if you do find yourself in a gunfight and you don't really have access to cover. First off, jump shots. As much as people hate jump shotters in this game, it's effective. It works. This can sometimes get you out of a sticky situation where you find yourself without cover and you just need to try and push the odds a little bit more in your favor because they're clearly stacked against you. I'm not saying you should jump shot in every single gunfight. You really have to pick your moment and pick your situation, and a lot of this just comes down to experience. But a lot of the times, if you find yourself without cover, try to jump shot against your enemy if you can manage to still stay on target. Same thing goes with the next strategy. This is drop shotting. Again, a lot of people don't really like drop shotters, but in this game, I feel like the drop shot is relatively balanced. You don't drop to the ground immediately. You're actually a little bit slow. So this isn't like the perfect strategy that's just going to allow you to win every single gunfight as you rush around the map. It's just something that can maybe save you in a situation where the odds are stacked against you. Next up when it comes to gunfights, this is a relatively obvious one. This is strafing. So when you're aiming down sight, move laterally to your target. So side to side in relation to your target. Don't be a sitting duck. I see far too many people that just stand still and try to shoot back. They're the easy kills. They're super easy to win gunfights against because you just don't miss them. When you strafe side to side, especially in an online environment, you make yourself a much more difficult target to hit. A lot of the times the aim assist gets a little bit weird online and you just can't track the people that are strafing. So you want to take advantage of this and stack the odds in your favor by strafing in a gunfight. Another benefit to strafing in a gunfight that a lot of people aren't aware of is this is what activates your aim assist rotation on console. If you stand completely still and you don't move your feet, you don't get the aim assist rotation, which is what allows you to stick to your enemies a little bit more effectively while you're in a gunfight. So make sure your feet are moving every single time you get in a gunfight. Even if you're behind a piece of cover, strafe a little bit side to side while staying in cover. It will help you stay on target and it will make you a more difficult target for your enemies to hit. So that's pretty much it for gunfights. Now I want to move on to the next section though, and this is your loadouts or your divisions or your class setups, whatever you want to call them. These can often be what lead to your success or hold you back in a game. Now keep in mind, I'm a firm believer in people should use what they're comfortable with and what works for them. So I'm not going to tell you just copy and paste this particular class setup and you'll succeed. Because what works for me might not work for you and your playstyle. Having said this, there are certain things that absolutely contribute more to success than other things. So there's certain basic training skills that are clearly better than others when it comes to maximizing your number of kills while minimizing your number of deaths. My recommendations for the best basic training skills to be using if you are trying to maximize kills while minimizing deaths. First up, Lookout. Lookout is amazing not only for seeing enemy name tags at longer distances, that's a nice perk with it, but the main reason I like Lookout is it significantly increases your minimap coverage, and this gives you a much greater awareness of what's going on around you. You can see better where your teammates are watching, where your teammates aren't watching. You can see the enemy's dots at a much greater distance, so you can prepare for them a little bit better, and I find Lookout helps significantly, especially in game modes like Team Deathmatch. Now, when I get into more objective-oriented modes, and even sometimes in game modes like Team Deathmatch, I also like Hunker. Hunker is one of my top choices. I think out of all of the perks in the game, this is the one that I use the most, and this is simply due to the fact that there's grenades everywhere in this game. Everybody has a grenade on their class, and they're throwing them pretty much every single time they spawn, and they can be very deadly in this game. I can't count how many times my life has been saved by having the Hunker basic training skill on. Just in case you guys are wondering and you don't know what Hunker is, this is basically like Flak Jacket from the past. It will allow you to survive explosives much more effectively. And the final one that I wanted to cover here as far as basic training skills go, keep in mind that you can go outside of these three. I'm not saying that you have to stick to these three, but the last one that I really enjoy using when I'm not using the infantry division, this is scoped. Scoped not only practically eliminates idle sway when you're aiming down sight, which helps you stay on target at those longer ranges a lot more effectively, it also increases your strafe speed in a gunfight. And like I was saying earlier, strafing in gunfights can be very effective, and the faster you're able to do that, the more effective it's going to be. As for divisions, I would say generally use what works for you, but it's pretty clear that the best divisions to be using if you're trying to maximize your success overall, they're going to be infantry, airborne, and sometimes mountain. Generally, infantry and airborne are your best bets. Mountain can be great for a lot of the more quieter modes, so obviously like search and destroy, mountain is a #1 choice. But even team deathmatch, mountain can be great for team deathmatch because you will often get sound horde. People will hear you coming from a mile away, and it also helps you pinpoint other people's footsteps if you are running mountain, because now you don't have to hear your footsteps on top of that. So if you're trying to be a little bit stealthy, you're trying to sound whore a little bit, mountain is great, but in every other scenario, your best bets are clearly going to be either infantry or airborne. And that's pretty much all the tips I wanted to give when it comes to divisions. I don't want to be too restrictive with this by telling you, you have to use this, you have to use that. Just wanted to give you a few little pointers and kind of my mindset when it comes to that. But now we're going to move on to the final section of this video when it comes to staying alive longer and improving yourself as a player. This is learning from your mistakes. It's something that you see from a lot of the top players in the game. Every single time something goes wrong that doesn't work out in their favor, they're always thinking of what could they have done better in that situation. So every single time you die, think to yourself, what did I do wrong and how could I improve that in the future? What could I have done differently to make that go in my favor rather than what happened? Was it the way that I set myself up in the first place? Did he have the clear advantage in that gunfight where he was set up with cover and I wasn't? Or was I missing my shots? Did I hit a couple shots, but then I was a little bit off target, like just barely off target, but I was, and it caused me to lose that gunfight? Be honest with yourself and find out what went wrong. Far too many people are way too quick to jump on the fact that, oh, it's just the game's fault. These servers suck. Aim assist is broken. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. Sprint out times are stupid. And while I might agree with some of that stuff, and oftentimes this can get in the way, I'm not saying these things don't get in the way. All you can really do to improve is focus on you and what you have control over. So even if that guy clearly did have a connection advantage over you in that gunfight, what could you have done to stack those odds in your favor to the point where you kind of equalize that connection advantage that he has? So could you have set yourself up even better for that situation, so regardless of his internet connection, you still get the kill on him? Or could you have been a bit more accurate in that? Maybe if you didn't miss that 1 or 2 shots, you would have won that gunfight. Always focus on the things that you have control over and try not to just look for a scapegoat to your problems. Don't just write every death off as, oh, my connection sucks, or hit detection sucks, or anything like that. Sometimes it does, but you generally don't have control over that. Focus on what you can control. So always be evaluating yourself, always be honest with yourself when it comes to that stuff, and try to avoid looking for scapegoats. And with that, I feel like that's a great place to wrap up this video. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what are your guys' tips for maximizing kills while minimizing deaths in CoD World War II? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.